Hi everyone, this week we're taking a look at what the word myth means in an academic sense, and what that might mean for you. In the way that scholars discuss myth, it really is an inescapable story. So what do we mean by that? Myth, in this sense, pervades our lives. It's how we give meaning to the world around us through the stories we tell ourselves. Have you ever met someone that you just didn't get? Perhaps they were from another culture or just a different perspective. Chances are the stories that define their lives are different from the ones that define your life. That doesn't mean they're bad or even wrong, just different. Let's start off by discussing what myth is. When you think of the word myth, you might think of those grand epics from Greek mythology with Zeus, Hercules, Aphrodite, and Ares. Maybe the word myth makes you think of fairy tales like Little Red Riding Hood or Rumpelstiltskin, or even urban legends like the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot,
on this very night,
or even Large Marge.
it looked like this.
Well, scholars have a very particular definition of the word myth, and it's not any of those things. For those who research this area of human experience, they use the word myth as a word to describe a defining narrative. So what do they mean by a defining narrative? If you look at the grand sweep of human history and delve into how societies over time have held together, you find that people define themselves around the stories they share. These stories, or what scholars call narratives, are packed with meaning. They tell where the community sees itself as coming from and where it's going. They also convey the values of the culture. You might see these myths or defining narratives as the software our collective brains use to interact with each other and the world around us. Learning these defining narratives is like downloading information and internalizing how we see the world and ourselves in it. Some people think of myths as fantastical stories that are rejected by modern culture. But that's not what we're talking about when we talk about myths as defining narratives. Whether it's a polytheist from antiquity or a scientist from today, everyone operates from an understanding driven by stories that define how we see the world. As you can imagine, these narratives are challenged by contact with differing perspectives. Rival narratives have bumped against each other throughout human history. Defining narratives don't just spring into the world spontaneously. People use ancient texts and philosophical systems, as well as sacred symbols and even physical experiments to examine the world they inhabit. None of these tools provide a way to escape from myth as the defining narrative. Just the opposite. These texts, philosophies, and experiments help drive the narratives and refine them over time. Think about your own perspective on faith, as well as your perspective on science. Include in that your family or community history, as well as how you see yourself as a citizen of where you live, and your place in the world overall. The information you encounter to fill in the blanks about these big questions pass through defining narratives in order to help your mind construct a belief system. It doesn't stop there. As your defining narratives interpret information, it also conveys values. These include values of responsibility, caring for others, resourcefulness, and self-control. The range of values is virtually endless, and they're tightly wound together with the stories we tell ourselves. We all have defining stories or narratives, myths if you like, that provide meaning to who we are. Going forward, consider what you think is the relationship between myth, as we defined it here, and truth. Think about the difference between the academic sense of myth as a defining narrative and fairy tales or urban legends. Also, ask yourself, why are stories such powerful vehicles for cultural values? And what values do you derive from the stories that you most identify with? See you in class!